Welcome to She Lancer, Mom Entrepreneur with VoiceOver Angela. I'm your host, Angela. I'm a full-time voiceover artist and audiobook narrator, and this podcast are the audio versions of my live Q&A chats on YouTube. If you'd like to be part of the live Q&A chats, come on over to my YouTube channel, VoiceOver Angela. I'm live every Tuesday at 12 p.m. EST. We talk about voiceover, the business of voiceover, audiobooks, and so much more. Find more information on my website, voiceoverangela.com. Enjoy today's episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me again for the live Q&A session here on my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Angela. I'm a full-time voiceover artist and audiobook narrator, and my channel is dedicated to those of you just getting started out in this wonderful world of voiceover and audiobook narration. And through my channel, I share with you tips and tricks and techniques and things that I do every day in my own voiceover business, and then we get together in these weekly chats to talk about a topic or two. And if you're not new here, then you know that every week we have a new poll, and that is generally the topic of the day. Again, we'll always see how it goes, but today's topic is, we're talking about ACX's standards. Of course, as you know, most of these are derived from, the topics are derived from the questions that I get in the weeks preceding. And I've had a lot of questions about ACX's standards recently. So I thought it was a good time to go over these again. So the question, of course, today is, how often do you struggle with meeting ACX's standards? Now, if you haven't even tried to narrate an audiobook, produce an audiobook, or even have attempted to meet ACX's standards, then I'm hoping that something I say or someone else says today will help you to move forward, right? Make you feel a little bit more confident about moving forward and producing that audiobook, or at least auditioning, right? Can't get a book offer without auditioning. And if that's what's holding you back, the hesitancy is because you don't know if you can hit ACX standards, then I'm hoping this will help. Okay, so looking at the poll, looks like we have 33 votes, and 3% of you said often. 12% of you said sometimes. 36% of you said never, and then almost half of you said I haven't tried yet. Okay, good. So I'm hoping we can help you guys out today. For those of you that said never, how long did it take you to get to that never? I know it took me a while. I mean, just being honest, you guys know me. I just like to be as transparent as possible. I don't like to sugarcoat things, but it took me a while to get to never. And then even then, it's not really never, right? Every once in a while. But I haven't had a kickback in probably, a few years maybe, but I don't know. Pumping the brakes on a tangent. I know, I feel it coming. All right, let's get over to the comments and see. Actually, you know what? No. Let's go over to ACX first, and then we'll get to comments. Okay, so for those of you that are unfamiliar with ACX, ACX is an arm of Amazon. And this is where audiobook narrators and authors, or publishers even, come together to find each other to create audiobooks for Audible and other platforms, mainly Audible. But and the ACX standard is the formatting requirements in which your files need to adhere to be accepted by ACX. And that is typically the most challenging part of producing an audiobook, I have found, for most people that I've worked with, including myself, is getting the right combination of effects and, microphone gain. I mean, there could be a lot of different factors that affect you meeting ACX's standard. So we're going to go over all of this stuff together, and then I'll show you a couple things that is available through ACX. But ultimately, I also want to note that ACX is not available in every country, so definitely go to acx.com and see if it is available in your country first, because they do say that they keep expanding to different countries. So By the time you watch this, it could be, it could be available in your country, but double check that first. All right, so if we go to ACX.com, let me show that screen really quick. Actually, let me find the right screen. Hold on. I have a few up here. Okay, so I want to let's go to this one. Okay, so this is on ACX.com. If you already have a profile there and you go to the Help tab, you can punch in just about any question you have. That almost everything that you would want to know is right there on ACX. They have great videos. They have a YouTube channel too, so there's a lot of great information you can find through ACX.com. So here on the help page, I just clicked on audio submission requirements. Super simple to find, but essentially this is what you need to include with your audio. As far as how to break up the files, you always need to have the opening and closing credits. And the opening credits is essentially the title of the book, subtitle of the book if there is one, written by, author's name, narrated by, or read for you by your name as the narrator/producer. And then the closing credits, these are two separate files, right? And the closing credits is pretty much the same. Title of the book, or this has been first, title of the book, subtitle of the book, written by, author's name, read for you or narrated by your name, the narrator-producer, and then any kind of copyright information. So if the book was written in 2025, it'll be copyright by whomever owns the copyright, usually the author, unless it's a publisher. Double check the copyright information on the manuscript or ask the rights holder how they want it done. Copyright by whoever owns the rights, and then the year in which the audiobook is produced. And then if there is no the end at the end of the book, you want to include the end in the closing credits after the copyright information. Again, for those of you that narrate the spicy books, make sure that there's nothing violent or explicit in that retail sample, or in the, I'm looking at retail sample. I'm getting ahead of myself. Opening and closing credits is what we're talking about first. And then there is also a retail sample. The retail sample is, that caught my eye. The retail sample is also a separate file. This is essentially what the listener is going to be listening to. As you know, if you've ever been on Audible and you're scrolling through the different books that are available and there's a sample that you can click on to hear, that way you can get a kind of an idea of what the narrator sounds like, how it's produced, what the content is, right? That is the retail sample. So you can generally just take that from, I usually use like the introduction or the first bit of chapter 1, right? You can just take that and use that as a retail sample, but just again, make sure there's nothing violent or explicit in that sample if you do spicy books or really any books. But that also needs to adhere to ACX's standard as well, as far as the half a second to a second of room tone at the beginning of the file or head of the file, and then a 2 to 5 seconds of room tone at the tail of the file or at the end of the file. So all of these should be formatted the same way. All of the files are formatted the same way with the room tone at the beginning and at the end. I get that question a lot. And then all of the other files in between the opening and the closing credits are going to be the different sections or chapters of the book, depending on how it's formatted. I usually use the table of contents. I bring that up first, and then I start creating files for each section. So you'll have the opening credits first, and then you'll have, if the author wants any kind of dedications, preface, usually include the preface. If there's any kind of, anything else preceding, like the main body of the book, those will be in separate files. And then you'll go into chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. People often ask me if there are subsections within a chapter. Those are all to remain within that chapter file. The only exception is if that file exceeds 120 minutes. 120 minutes, including that half a second to a second of room tone at the head and the 2 to 5 seconds of room tone at the tail or end of the file. So, and I've only had that happen once, I think, where I had a chapter exceed 120 minutes and I had to break down chapter 1 into 2 sections. I'm hoping that makes sense. And then you'll have, after all the chapters, if there's a prologue or, or epilogue or anything else about the author, if there's anything else that the author wants included, then those would be also included as separate files. If you have references, citations, a glossary, things like that, they're generally not included in an audiobook production. But again, always good rule of thumb is when you're in doubt, ask the rights holder. Ask the rights holder what they want included in their book, right? Make sure that you ask the rights holder, but they're generally not included. Let's see. Everything else, I think okay, so let's get into the actual quality and the standards. For the audio file itself, a question I get a lot is, should I choose stereo or mono? It technically doesn't really matter which one you choose, as long as every file stays the same way, is the same format. So if you choose stereo, every file needs to be in stereo, or, or mono, right? If you choose mono, they all need to be in mono. I like sticking with mono because, if you want to get really nitpicky, I guess it doesn't really matter, but I'm thinking of all the different devices in which our listeners are listening to us on, right? So if they're listening in a car stereo versus a Bluetooth speaker, or maybe one earbud, maybe both. If you choose mono, then they get the same listening experience through one speaker versus 2. So I always choose mono. No extra sounds, and sound must be consistent for these two here. Extra sounds could be, a TV playing in the background, a dog barking, in the distance somewhere, crazy mouth noise or clothes rustling, right? Jingling of bracelets, anything that is not part of the book, essentially, right? Not just your room tone, but any extraneous sounds that shouldn't be in an audiobook that could be distracting, right? Audio sound must be consistent. Once you have your effects rack down, you have your home studio, the recording space dialed in, which we talked about last week. It's a good idea to keep notes on what effects you used. If you don't have the ability or forgot to save your effects rack as a preset, right? Once you have all of those little settings set and everything sounds great and the end result gets you to where you need to be for ACX's standards and you didn't save it, at least going forward, the next time you do it, at least make notes as to what effects you use and what settings you had them at. That way, those same effects in the same way are applied to every file going forward. So the audio quality is pretty consistent across the board. People with a trained ear or a good ear can tell the difference, and that can be distracting too for the listener if the audio quality sounds a little bit different from file to file to file. So ACX is trying to make sure that that's not distracting. Volume is between -23 dB and -18 dB RMS. This one, I find that the RMS standard and the peak level standard is usually the toughest part of trying to meet these standards, because once you bring up the volume to get to between -18 and -23 dB, that usually throws off your peaks. But what I want to remind you is that this standard about peak levels being less than -3 dB, the -3 dB is not your target. You're not trying to get to negative 3 dB. You just cannot exceed negative 3 dB. So as you're testing your files, if your RMS is right, but you're at negative 3.25, you're good, right? You're not trying to get to exactly negative 3 dB. You just cannot exceed it. So if your peaks are negative 2 point anything, they're too high. You need to bring the volume down of the entire file, which is usually a quick fix, right? That's not your target. You just cannot exceed it. So keep that in mind. That might help you out too. The noise floor is another one. This one was a tough one for me just because of the way that my room is set up. The noise floor is the ambient noise level of the room between your dialogue, right? So in the times in which you are quiet, that ambient room noise is your noise floor, essentially. So that is a good way to test your noise floor, is to test the sections between the dialogue and then watch your volume bar as you play it. And if you're past negative 60, right, if it's louder than negative 60, then you might need to find a way to reduce the noise, the ambient noise level in your room. The room tone less than 5 seconds. This is in reference to between sections. So, for example, if you have a chapter, let's just say chapter 1 has 2 subsections. So you want to give a little bit of a space or a break between those subsections to indicate to the listener that this is a different section. That pause cannot exceed 5 seconds. So if you do 3 seconds, I think 3 seconds, maybe 3.5, 4 seconds, maybe even is more than sufficient. It just cannot exceed 5 seconds. So also keep that in mind for when you have a client who wants, let's say, like a meditation book, right? Because I've been in this position before where meditations, there's typically longer pauses. So you might want to let the client know that ACX might have an issue with longer pauses. I think I was able to get past it once with music only because specifically the book said to pause for X amount of time, right? It said to take a pause for 10 seconds or something like that. So therefore it was indicated in the text. I think that was the only way I was able to do that for the client. Otherwise, you can't have silence for more than 5 seconds. I hope that makes sense. And then for your file formatting itself, so when you're saving your file, when you're all done with it, it's edited, you meet the noise floor requirement, you meet the RMS requirement, you meet the peak level or the peak volume requirement, everything else is perfect. And then you're saving the final file as an MP3. It cannot be 192 kbps or higher, or it needs to be 192 kbps or higher. And then it also needs to be 44100 kilohertz and 16-bit depth or bit depth, right? I have a ton of videos on my audiobook production playlist that can walk you through all of these things. But if you have any doubts, missed anything I said, if you want to go and look at this yourself, I highly recommend that you do. Again, ACX has a ton of videos on YouTube as well about all of this stuff. I did want to show you guys another way that you can check your files directly through ACX. So let me go back to this one. Okay, so from your ACX dashboard, let's just say you're signed up with ACX, and from your dashboard, if you go to Audio Lab and you click that, you'll have this page come up, and then you click Check It Out. And you can actually upload your file, right, if you want to test it. If you don't have any other way to test your file to make sure that you're ACX compliant, you can upload your files directly into Audio Lab, and it'll tell you where you're missing or which standard that you're missing. It'll tell you if your noise floor is too high or conversely too low. It'll tell you if your RMS is within range or if you're out. Your peak levels, it'll tell you all of that stuff. That way you can go back and make some adjustments before you upload them into ACX. Or you can even do this with your auditions. And I highly recommend that your auditions are also ACX compliant, because you want to give the client a good idea of what the final product is going to sound like. And it's good practice, too, to make sure that you're meeting ACX's standards. So you can use Audiolab to test your files to make sure that you are hitting ACX's standards. There was one other thing that I wanted to show you, I think, or did we cover everything? I think I got everything. If I missed anything, if you have any questions about anything that I've discussed so far, then definitely put those in the comments. But we've got a ton of comments, so let's get over to them. We had some people in here talking before I even got here this morning. I think Chris was in here first. Chris says, you can think about it, you can talk about it, but until you commit to doing it, you'll never succeed. Just do the thing, and success will follow you. 110% agree. 120% agree. 150% agree. Just do it, right? Just turn off all the voices of doubt and whatever else. Just turn them off and just do it. Just try it. Just keep at it once you do. You will find that the more that you put in, the more you're going to get out, just with anything else, right? The more time you spend with it, training, practicing, investing, the more you'll get out of it at some point, right? Well said, Chris. Coach Ariel says, looking forward, Angelisms. Oh, I'm sure you got a few of those. Happy Tuesday from usually warm and sunny Northern California. What is it? What's the temperature over there? I think it's like 40 something here in the desert. It was 30 something this morning. It was cold. Dwight. Hi, Dwight. Good morning to my fellow early bird Angelistas. Good morning to you, VO mentor extraordinaire Angela. Good morning to all the rest of my lurking fellow Angelistas. Happy VOing with you today. I like that. Happy VOing. Great topic today. Get your effects rack right and you're all set. Next subject. Nah, just kidding. What Angela's about to say, or just did say before reading this, now that is the correct answer. Thank you, Dwight. Dwight says to Chris's point, the first step is committing to it. The next is just starting. That confirms the commitment. Then off you go, and hopefully with some basic plan on how to achieve, or how to achieve. Sir, continue. Oh, no. Then he goes on to say, so I answered never, but in reality, it is more like 99% of the time. Yeah, every once in a while, you might have to make a tweak, because not every file is going to be the same. I find that even sitting in the same spot, going from recording chapter 1 to chapter 2, they sound a little bit different. I don't know why that is. It just does. So every file is going to be a little bit different. There also may be, dialogue within one chapter over another that's maybe a little bit louder. Maybe you have characters that are having an argument or something. So the waveforms are going to be a little bit different for every file. So, you might every so often have a file that needs a little more attention than others. But if you know how to handle it, which hopefully you do, after watching my channel for a little bit. In the beginning, that wasn't the case. Same. I struggled a long time with getting them down. I struggled until I got a good effects rack to get me going. Then I spent the time really learning more and more what was technically happening, why we do what we do with effects racks, then how we do what we do with those effects. Learn every day. Yes. And also I want to insert here, this is a good time to insert this comment. For those of you that watch lots of VO people or audiobook narrators on YouTube and they're going through their effects racks, for you watching, if you don't need an effect, just because you see someone else using it doesn't mean that everybody does. Effects are for there's particular solutions to a particular problem. If you don't have that problem, don't use that effect, or use it very sparingly to start. Don't ever go super heavy on any effect, because even the effects that enhance your voice are still destructive, right? They can do more damage than good if you use too much. So again, get with groups, join groups, get with masterminds, workshops like mine, peers. Get with your peers, get to a place where you are allowed to share your demo with others to get feedback. Preferably one where they can actually look at your audio file and hear it, right, and test it. And they can probably make some really good suggestions on what effects you even need. Because in the beginning, I didn't know what the heck I needed. I didn't even know what everything did. I just was like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick. Just because I watched several other people on YouTube say that they needed it. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to get that and use it when I really didn't need it. And it does more damage to your audio quality than you would think. So, tangent, Angelism. Of course, the guy that knows everything about anything technical and audio quality is Caesar. Hey, I remember answering this same question last year in March, and I'm happy to now be able to answer never. Woohoo! I nail it every time. Sure, it took a lot of learning, though. It wasn't easy. My current workflow addresses errant peaks, smooth dynamics control, all gain staged, then into a clipper and limiter. I have an output meter in the DAW that tells me if I'm mastering to ACX specs. I also have an input meter that tells me whether I'm too quiet or too hot on the mic before recording. Learning all this has been a great joy in my life. I now use this knowledge to help others. Yes, you do. And I and everyone else that you have helped are all very appreciative of it and for you, Caesar. You are an amazing asset, an amazing addition to my Platinum group. I appreciate you being there. But for those of you watching, it took Caesar some time to get to that place. It took me some time to get to that place. So don't ever get down on yourself for not knowing what you don't know yet. Because you will learn it. The more, again, just like everything else, you just have to keep with it. Just consistency. Just continuing to learn, to grow, right? Preferably with your peers, with others. That's the best way to go about it. But it does take time. So don't get hard on yourself if it's not clicking right away, because it just won't. It's something brand new. It's very technical, and it takes some trial and error. It takes some practice. So just keep going. Just keep going. It'll come. Caesar says, that said, hello, Angela. Hello. Hello, everyone. NAMM 2025 is on. New gear is fun, but start with what you have now. And don't forget, plugins are also an important investment, not just hardware. And plugins are effects or any kind of other micro that can help your situation. More often effects that you can buy that are not native to the DAW that you have chosen. So, for example, Adobe Audition, which is the DAW, which is the digital audio workstation that I use to record and edit on every single day, it comes with its own set of effects, like a basic noise reducer. I say basic, but it has a ton of effects in there. Only a handful of them are really, for voiceover, but anything that your DAW does not have that is a specific need for you, you can purchase from waves.com. That is a website where you can purchase specific plugins for specific needs, right? If you've seen any of my other videos where I talk about my effects rack, I have NS1. There's Clarity VX, I believe it is. There's a ton of them there for specific needs. If you're looking for a really good suite of plugins, Isotope izotope.com, izotope.com. You're looking for the RX audio repair bundles, right? There's 3 different bundles. In the middle in the middle bundle and the big bundle, there is a mouth declick, not just declick, but mouth declick. If you have a sticky mouth and you have a lot of mouth noise, that one plugin is worth the entire bundle. It's worth the investment in purchasing that suite of plugins. It saves so much time. It cut my editing downtime by like 80% because I was having to manually remove all that mouth noise. Manually, right? So it took that just out of the equation. But that's what plugins are. They are effects that you can purchase individually or as bundles outside of what is available in your DAW. Peak Parable says, when I first started out, ACX standard was like Christmas lights. But when I first started out, or light bulbs, it was Christmas light. That's exactly what it is. Once you have one down, then it throws something else off, and then you're just back to tearing your hair out. It's a delicate balance. It really is. It's a delicate balance between figuring one thing out and then having to address another one, and then to get the two to work in harmony with each other. Hence, I say trial and error, because it does take a little bit of practice to get right. Unless you have someone like Caesar in your court that might be able to go, do this and then do that, right? Or if you hire an audio engineer, you can go that route too, and they can probably create a rack for you based on your particular situation. Peak Parable says it took hours to play with it and figure it out. Now that it is dialed in, it's a matter of repeating that same process, which has significantly cut down on editing and processing time needed. It does take time to get there. Again, don't be hard on yourself. It will come. You just got to keep with it. And then as soon as you get there, you're golden. Golden, Colorado. Dwight says to Peak Parables, wonderful news. Now is the time to learn the components of your rack and what tweaks you can make on the fly if you need to. Especially helpful at software updates that mess things up. Yes. Software updates. Sometimes when you have software updates, even on your, if your computer gets software updates, that could throw a setting off here or there. So I've had to do it a time or two. So don't freak out. Just go through all the settings, and it's usually just one stupid little box that needs to be checked or unchecked, right? It's always the way it goes. But learning your DAW and the effects within it and how everything is set, to Dwight's point, is definitely recommended, so you can find where the issue is. Lacey Renee Marie says, good morning from very chilly Minnesota. I bet. If it's cold here, I can't imagine what it's like in Minnesota. Paul is here. Hey, Paul. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Tanya says, evening all from chilly Manchester, UK. Peak Parables, that's where I am now. Have to amplify every time to meet the RMS requirement. If you have to increase the volume of your file every time, you might just want to consider turning up the gain on your mic. Or depending on what DAW you have, you can even include turning up the output gain in your effects rack. That's what I do in Adobe Audition. I have it just set as part of my rack. Is after all of the effects are applied, it then turns up the volume to whatever I told it to turn it up to, and then it'll do that every time for me. So if that's a consistent issue for you, you could do one of those two things, and it might save you a little bit of time. Tanya says, that said, I have had my first paid offer accepted on ACX today. Good for you. And it's all thanks to you, Angela. Oh, you did the work. You just listened to my tangents, but you did the work. Congratulations. And everyone here with the insights and the encouragement. Thank you. Great job, Tanya. Dylan says, hello all. I'm blessed to have an effects rack by Caesar, so I hit specs every time. Caesar says, amplification is normal. You record between -18 dB to -12 dB. Process your performance with EQ and dynamics control, then push everything up to loudness spec which for ACX is negative 23 dB to negative 18 dB total RMS. Dylan says, congrats. Dwight says, congrats, Tanya. That is great news. Lacey says, does ACX have a standard to meet general American accent? I have a slight nope. There's actually, I think that was something else I wanted to show you guys. Because I think I saw your comment not too long ago. Here, let me just show you something. Hold on. Let me get back to the present. So, hang on a second. I know, I need two screens. I know. Is it this one? Yes, it's this one. Okay, so share this screen. All right, so over here, I clicked open the accent drop down. Do you see all these accents? Look at this one, Midwest. Look at all these accents that are available, right? And there's 44 more. Don't ever limit yourself. That's what I wanted to say. Don't ever limit yourself and stop yourself from starting by telling yourself that you can't because of XYZ. Just go take a look. Just submit it. Just go create the profile. Just go do it. Don't think about the what ifs or I can't or what, don't even start down that rabbit hole because you might never climb back out. Just go do it. Just go do it. All right. I go back to my full face. Yeah, so go sign up. Jim. Hey, Jim. Hello from frozen over Memphis. Ugh, where 20 degrees is our lot for at least another day. No, thank you. Caesar says, congrats, Tanya. Dylan, I'm glad that FX Rack is working out for you. Lacey, I think that will be determined by the RH upon reviewing your audition. That won't be up to ACX. Dwight says to Lacey, if that is a joke, it is a funny one. And if no, don't worry. The Midwest accent is considered normal American English accent. It is when you talk to the real OGs. Walter Cronkite. Paul Landrigan says, good day all. This is a much misunderstood area, my honest opinion. I agree. It's important to realize that processing will be different for everyone. You can't just copy someone else's recommendations. You have to find what works for your voice and your setup. Change the room, change the mic, and the processing will need to change. This is why I say your particular situation when you have somebody helping you with your effects rack or a audio engineer if you decide to hire one. Because again, everybody's recording space, the size, shape, how it's set up, how you have it treated is going to be different from person to person to person. The mic is going to be probably different from person to person to person. Your proximity to it, how it's positioned, your voice in general, the ambient noise around you, there's so many different variables to consider from studio to studio to studio. That's why every effects rack has to be customized to your specific recording area and your setup, right? So to Paul's point, as I said before, you can't just take someone else's effects rack from their YouTube video and apply it to yours and have it have the same end result. It just won't. There's too many variables to consider there. That's why you have to have an effects rack that is specific to your studio. Sean Tyler says, I don't have an issue with the standards, but the final QC takes forever. And that is pretty typical. Forever, it was somewhere between 7 to 10 days. During the height of COVID, it was up to 30 plus days. But I think for the most part, they're back down to about 7 to 10 days, I think. maybe a little bit longer. But it's definitely not 30 days. Yeah, it does take some time, though. Lacey says, thank you, Dwight. And yes, it was an actual question, LOL. I've only been at this a week, so I don't know much about it. It's okay. Dwight's just poking fun. It's okay. He's not mean-spirited. But no, there's a need for every accent. And I would say, even if it's just a if the audition is looking for even just an American accent, throw your audition in there. If they're not specifically asking for Midwest, I would still include your audition. Because if you think about us as Americans, if you're not super familiar with other accents outside of an American accent, would you be able to tell the difference between someone from North Ireland or some South Ireland? Probably not. Right? But someone in Ireland would. They would definitely recognize that right away. So just submit the audition. Just submit it. Dylan says that's why booth audits are so important if you have a rack made for you. Yep, it should be made specific to your situation. Peak Parable says the great thing about ACX standards is they are universally accepted. I've started working. Do you have a continuation? I don't see one. Oh, wait. I think what you mean by that is that ACX's standards is pretty much the same standards across the board for other distributors. I think that's what you meant by that comment. And you're correct. I think most distributors are roughly the same, if not maybe a subtle tweak here and there. But whatever platform your author wants to submit their book on, just make sure that you, as the producer, are familiar with what those standards are. So, for example, anytime that I'm working with an author or in like the negotiating stage with an author, I'll ask them where do they plan on distributing their audiobook. And ACX is usually 90% of the time, but every once in a while they'll say, I'm going to this distributor or this distributor or this distributor. And so you, as the professional, want to go to that platform and see what those file requirements are. So you're familiar with them, but for the most part, they're generally the same. Jim said, heard Volkswagen is bringing back the Beetle as an electric car. They're calling it the Lightning Bug. Ba-da-bum. Chris says, it's great to finally make it to a live vid. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. I've been I speak words. I've been binge watching these live streams for a few weeks now. Thanks for all the info and motivation. Well, good. I'm glad. I apologize for the tangents. Dwight says to Jim's, shocking. Crystal says, my first live vid here. So happy to catch it. Welcome, Crystal. Yay. Tess says, hey, y'all from colder than normal. There you go. Dracula. Gotta call it Dracula. Jim says, cannot stick around for the whole time. Gotta go knock out some demos. Attaboy. Go get 'em, Jim. Peak Parable says, I've recently joined local media roster or audiobooks when I told them I meet ACX's standards and done before it opened the doors. ACX is a higher standard than some use and universally accepted. Pretty much the same. Jay Crit says, I use Audacity right now, so I use the ACX check plugin. Or you can use that. The ACX check plugin, I forget where you get that. But I used that also when I was using Audacity. But just remember, I highly recommend that if you can learn how to check your files within your own DAW yourself, it would be a better advantage for you. So again, to Dwight's point that he made a little while ago about learning your DAW and how the effects work and how to check if you're ACX compliant or if you're whatever distributor compliant yourself is better than using or relying on a third-party checker, because the software is not always correct. 99.8% of the time, maybe 99% of the time, it's correct. But I mean, just like with any other app or technology, it's not going to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. So it would behoove you to learn your DAW to check your own files yourself instead of being reliant on software that's not 100%. And I hate the word perfect, but you know what I mean, that works perfectly every time. Caesar says, how long it took, let me tell you, 1.5 years. 1.5 years to get your effects rack down. Oh my gosh. I think it was roughly the same for me. I was never happy with it until about that time too. Actually, that's when I hired Tim Tippett to do a booth audit. J. Crit said, once I had the plug-in, it was a few seconds. Oh, the ACX plugin. Tanya says, hey, everyone. I woke up to a negative 11. No. Pass. Hard pass. Paul says, it didn't take me long to get to never, but I did have 40 years of audio engineering background. Well, I'm sure that definitely helped, didn't it? You had a leg up on us. Crystal says to Tanya, -5 here this morning with feels like -20. Oh, God, no. Caesar says, but that 1.5 years was dedicated to not just ACX's standards, but vocal processing, ear training, and so much more. You can hit ACX standard, but you still sound muddy or harsh. Yeah, and learning all of that takes time too. Katie. Hey, Katie. Ooh, I'm here when you're live. I started following your channel recently. Well, welcome to the tribe. Thanks for covering this subject. I'm anxious about the noise floor in my workspace will prevent me from reaching ACX's rules. Where there is a will, Katie, there is a way. You can usually figure out the best way to reduce any kind of noise in your room before it's even recorded, right? Because that'll definitely help you. That is definitely the way to go, is to figure out what the root cause of the noise is and remove or reduce that before it's even recorded, right? Is the best way to go. Because again, any kind of effects you use on the file is going to do some kind of damage to it, and we don't want to do that. But if you've done all that you can do to reduce or remove the noise before recording, you can still use some effects, or there are some tricks depending again on which DAW you're using can help to reduce some of that noise. But don't let that be a stopping factor. Don't let that be something that stops you. I've heard tons of noisy rooms, and we've always figured out a way around it. We've always figured out a way to make it sound its best. So don't let that stop you. Dwight says, never. That took me about 6 to 9 months as I was changing my physical booth world so much that it took a while, but even then I struggled for a while until I got to work with Christine and Caesar. Tess said, took me about a year, match loudness of Adobe Audacity. Adobe Audition, or Audacity was the final block that made it work for me. And Fritz says, I ended up hiring an audio engineer when I got my first audiobook gig to help me learn my DAW. Within that tutorial, I got my base settings, but it was still a struggle to consistently pass ACX. Yeah, even if you fully comprehend how your DAW works and how all the effects work, finding that delicate balance, that delicate choreography and settings, because your space is so unique from anyone else's. So even if you fully understand it, it's still going to take some time to figure out what's right for your space. So again, don't get down on yourself. It does take time, but once you get there, you're done. You're done skis. Anne says, I would love more audio engineering knowledge to know when I change things, I know exactly what it's doing. I mean, you know what I did before I hired Tim Tippett to help me out? I just would play with different settings and see what the end result would be. I use Adobe Audition, and you can actually hear live as you're playing the file back what the effect that you're currently using does to the audio file. So you can hear it in real time as you're adjusting settings. You can hear the difference in what it's doing. before you apply the effect to the audio file. So doing that gave me kind of an idea of what each effect did, what the settings would change, what it would sound like as I was adjusting the settings, and then having, several of them together in my rack, and then adjusting those settings just to see what it would sound like. So that was definitely helpful. But just playing with different settings, you learn so much from just doing that. John is here. Hey, John. Hello from Monroe. Very much missing my AZ winter. I bet you are, out in Washington. Michael Barrett says, hi, Angela. Off topic, but is there a demand for nonfiction narration? Michael, that's essentially all I do. That is my wheelhouse, is nonfiction. So, yes. Yes, if you think of all like the biographies, how-tos, informational pieces, there's a ton of them. Ton. Christine Barkhurst is here. Hello. Good morning, everyone. So glad I could join live. We're so glad that you're here. Reading Time with Poppy says, I have given up a few times after moving RMS and peek in and out of passing in Audacity. Still learning. Fortunately, YouTube doesn't care and my videos sound fine. I think feedback welcome. You have YouTube. Really, the only type of voiceover that has a standard is for audiobooks. Unless a client has asked you for something specific, or phone greetings even. For phone greetings, those you may need to adhere to a specific format for whatever phone service platform that your client is using. Might need to be a specific format as well. But audiobooks and phone greetings are the only kinds of voiceover really that need to be a specific kind of format. All other voiceover, general rule of thumb, you don't want any kind of audible background noise. And, the end result of the end volume should be somewhere between -3 and -6 dB. That's it. Again, unless the client has asked you for something specific. So YouTube, they're not going to care. They're not going to care about your audio quality, really, right? Your watchers might. Your watchers might care. But YouTube, no. Nah. Michael says, I'd appreciate input from anyone. Rustic Hillbilly, hey, good morning. What's the temperature out in Oregon? Poppy says, also good morning, everyone. This is Alex. Good morning, Alex. I love being here every week with Angela in this group, and I enjoy the donuts every time. We've had no donuts yet. Do we have any late people with donuts? We need some donuts. Paul says to Michael, of 28 books I've completed, 16 have been nonfiction. So, yes. Yes, I would say, I don't know the exact number of audiobooks I have done at this point, but somewhere north of 250, I would say 70 to 80% of them have been nonfiction, if that helps. That's my input. Michael says, thanks, Paul. Donnie's here. Hey, Donnie. Only had one issue, and it was too long of a delay at the end. With that said, hello all. I brought bagels. That works. I'll take bagels. I'll take bagels. Sally says, ugh, endless technical difficulties these past 2 weeks make me late. Grr. Maple bars and cherry fritters for all. Good, so we got bagels and we got maple bars and cherry fritters. All good things. All good things. Crystal says, do you usually submit a gig the entire audiobook at a time? Or would you send the rights holder a chapter or two at a time? When you mean if you have booked an audiobook production deal, those would have to be broken down into separate files, as I mentioned before. But depending on the platform in which you got the job on, for example, if we're talking about ACX, when you're uploading the final files, there's a production page where you can upload each file individually. And I guess depending on if the rights holder has asked you specifically to submit a chapter as you finish it so they can listen to it and approve it as you go, you could do it that way. But I always just submit them all at one time. That way the client can go through them all at one time and you can make all your revisions, if there are any, all at one time, right? So they all sound consistent and the same. And then it just seems like it's faster for me if I have all the revisions at one time. I can record them and fix them all at one time, right? So I submit them all at one time. But there are rights holders that will ask you to submit them one chapter at a time, maybe because their schedule doesn't allow them to listen through an entire audiobook at one time, right? Maybe they only have time for a chapter here, chapter there. So, but I generally do it all at one time. Paul says, there's no point in providing stereo files for something that is inherently mono. Yeah. Angel says, good morning. 12 minutes late, but I do have chocolate-filled croissants. Now we're getting into the good stuff. Yeah. Becca Sue says, my kiddo needs to go back to school. I'm going to need to rewatch this when he's either asleep or at school. Team Replay. If you're watching this video in Team Replay, please consider liking and subscribing, doing all the things, clicking all the buttons. I really appreciate it. It helps the algorithm push my content to more people who are looking for this information. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Michael says, just getting started, so I appreciate this community and the welcoming vibe. We do have a welcoming vibe. We are one of the most warm and fuzzy and welcoming communities that you will find on the YouTubes, or anywhere for that matter. But I am biased. Peak Parable says, I normally send rights holders 2 separate chunks. Small amounts in beginning for quality checks, then send all files at once in the end. I mean, there really isn't like a right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever you and the rights holder decide to do, whatever works for you and them, right? It's a team effort. Yeah. Dwight says to Crystal, great question. Either way, some only do it the whole book to keep the rights holder under control with production. Others love the input and collaboration. I like do, but only on the first 15 minutes. Yeah, that first 15 minutes for ACX is essentially just for that, is for the rights holder to review what you've done so far and then to make any adjustments before you go in to finish the remainder of the book. So that first 15-minute checkpoint is to see if you're narrating too slow, too fast, if there's any kind of quality checks that need to be made, right? If it's maybe too loud, it's not meeting ACX's standards. It's really just a checkpoint for both you and the rights holder to make sure that you're on the right track before you go through the undertaking of finishing the rest of the book, especially if it's a large book, right? Because you don't want to have to go through 50 chapters of narration to find that maybe the rights holder thinks that you're narrating way too fast or way too slow, and then you have to fix 50 some odd chapters. So that's what that 15-minute checkpoint is for. Peak Parable says, if uploading to ACX, then you have to upload all files and click submit at one time for rights holder to review. You could also click, well, I don't know if they made the change, but you used to be able to click submit to allow the rights holder access to the files to review them one at a time. But then they would have to unlock the files on their end so you could go in and upload more. Right? I don't know if that's the case anymore. Does anybody know for certain? I haven't worked directly with a rights holder in ACX in a while. It's usually off platform, and then they upload everything to ACX. So that used to be the case. But that's generally what I did anyway, is I just submitted them all at once, apart from the 15-minute checkpoint. Mark Samuels is here. Hello, Angela. Hello. Hope everyone is doing great with the journey. Yes, what did you say earlier, Dwight? VOing? Happy VOing today? Dwight says, welcome to all the newcomers today. There are a bunch of you. That is awesome. You came to the right place. Agreed. Then again, I'm biased. Crystal says, thank you, Dwight. David Brumfield says, hello from Hamilton, Ontario. Michael says, thanks, Dwight. Peak Parable says, one thing to keep in mind is most ACX standards is achieved by last week's topic for room treatment. After Effects is just the fine-tuning of that. Exactly. Your room is more important than your effects. Hands down. Donnie says, I am currently on my 4th book and have to say without this group and the Platinum group, I wouldn't be here. Stop. You will hear Angela's voice in your head. Just do it. And remember, you can do this. You can, Donnie. It's just like riding a bike, right? Just like we talked about the other day. It's like riding a bike. Don't forget to have fun. Don't forget to have fun. Remember why you wanted to do this in the first place, right? That's why I say wanting to do this can't be just about money. It can't. You have to have a passion and a drive and a appreciation and a love to do this, because that's going to keep you moving forward when times get tough. It can't just be about money. Otherwise it's going to come through in your read. Right? You'll sound detached and just disinterested, and that's not going to sell audiobooks, right? You have to have a love and a passion for this. So have fun with it. Remember that it's fun, and the rest will come. Tess says to Caesar, I had to look up NAM 2025. Eric Grimes. Hey, Eric. Welcome all. If you have questions about ACX's standards or anything VO, you are in the right place. Angela has a plethora of helpful videos. And the Platinum group is second to none. Talented and helpful. Oh, you guys. Thanks, Eric. Peak Parable says to Caesar, Angela, please don't say, Caesar, how can I get in touch with you for helping me to set up my new effects rack for a new mic setup? I'm sure Caesar will figure out a way to get that information to you. Jim says, thought it was 5 seconds in front, 1.5 on the tail. No, it's 0.5 to 1 second at the head of the file. So your narration essentially has to start between a half a second and a second. So your narration will be somewhere in the middle between half a second and a second. I usually shoot for 0.650 is how much room tone I use at the beginning. That way it's pretty much right in the middle between half a second and a second. The tail of the file has to be between a second and 5 seconds. Peak Parable says, I am not part of Angela's Discord group yet. Well, what are you waiting for? There's so much value there. Just check out my Platinum group, voiceoverangela.com. Go to the plans and pricing page. It's $20 a month. But we meet every Thursday. We have a great time. You have access to the Discord. You have access to Dwight and Caesar and everybody else. Well, not everybody else, but a majority of the comment section. Do it. Love to have you. The more perspectives and, the more the merrier, really. The more perspectives and insight. Caesar says to Tess, I know, right? It's like my chocolate factory. The Bishop says, hello. I started watching you a week ago. My wife decided she wanted to try to be a narrator, and I happen to be an audio engineer. That's a marriage made in heaven. After 1 week of learning, I passed ACX's standards. So excited. Good for you. But then again, you had probably a little more advantage than most of us did. Donnie says, Caesar, good to see you, sir. Dwight says to Sally, I made raspberry squares and orange marmalade squares for breakfast this morning. I was the hit of the house today. Same. Gregory says, donuts, danishes, kolaches, I don't even know how to pronounce that. I'm not cultured enough. Muffins and grapes are in the break room. Dallas is at 27. Break room, that's funny. Dallas is at 27 degrees. I didn't think it got that cold in Dallas. You're excused, Gregory. Caesar says, oh, hi, Donnie. Good to see you as well. Donnie says, my current book is from a returning author. And yes, there will be codes for those who want them, except Angela and Chris. They get them automatically. Joy says, hello, everyone, from frigid, cloudy Southfield, Michigan, where it's 8. 8 degrees with a wind chill of 10 below zero. Nope. Nope. My fight with ACX is with the noise floor. I use extra clothes, but it doesn't work. Keep in mind that extra clothes is going to help with absorbing the vibration of your voice and reducing echo and probably like deadening the room, but it's not going to help with noise. You need to find out where the noise is coming from. And it's usually the computer that you're using to record on is being picked up by the microphone. If you're close to a power source, like I have an electrical panel in here, which is my main problem, that emits like a low hum. If you're close to a water heater, a refrigerator, a fan, an HVAC system, those all make those low-end hums that create the noise. So it sounds like you have a noise problem and you're focusing on echo or room sound, right? So take a look around, Joy, and figure out what that could be coming from. Kristen says donut factory delivery. I know. I asked for donuts and we got just a ton of different options. Dwight says to Donnie, send over a bagel. I'm dying for one. It's too cold outside and I have a cold, so I can't get it myself. You have a cold? There's a lot of people sick right now. I can't get it myself. Cough, cough. When you going to get here? Kristen's laughing. I have jalapeno cheese. That'll knock the cold out of you. That sounds hungry. Stop. Okay, Dwight says, I had one ACX book that took 5 months to clear ACX QA. What? Nothing I did, just the rights holder had issues. Okay, well, it wasn't QA. It was the rights holder. I got paid and no changes were needed. Caesar says to Joy, are you still on Audacity? Last time I checked your noise floor, you were just fine. All you need is a high pass and expander. There you go. Dwight says, don't forget to smash the like and follow buttons. Yes, it helps. Or lightly click them. Don't do any smashing. Anne says, on the topic of ACX, I have had many auditions that I never hear back on. Aren't you supposed to get the thanks but no thanks email from every rights holder? There are some sitting out there and crickets. Once they select a narrator, then usually an automated message will be sent to everyone else who's auditioned saying, hey, sorry you didn't get this one, but keep trying, kind of a thing. So if you haven't heard anything back and you haven't received one of those automated messages, then it could be that they're still looking for their narrator. They're still looking. But yes, you should get an automated response. Unless something happened to the rights holder, maybe they changed their mind completely and didn't remove the book. I think I may have 1 or 2 auditions that have been from like years ago that are still undecided. Something happened. Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe they decided to go elsewhere with their book. I don't know. But don't sit around and wait. Keep auditioning. Keep going. Caesar says ACX Check is a Nyquist plugin that is available on the Audacity team website. Okay, there you go. If you have Audacity, that's where you can find the ACX Check plugin. I knew Caesar would know. Caesar says to Anne, not all the time. Most rights holders don't say anything or never pull the audition from ACX. It happens. But just keep going. Yours truly says, I'm brand new to VO. Welcome to the family. Would you say it's a good idea to have someone edit my VO in my first year or just learn to do it? I say just learn to do it. You'll be better off for it. You'll be more independent. You can keep more of the income for yourself. And learning how to make the tweaks. Again, if there's a software update, if something happens, you can make changes on the fly. Learning your own DAW, learning how to edit. I mean, all of it is just so frustrating and it takes a lot of time, but well worth it in the end. It makes you a stronger professional. So learn to do it. I highly recommend it. Because keep in mind, if you did decide to pay someone else to edit your stuff, you'd have to have them do that every single time. every single audition, every single project, and that could add up if you're paying someone to do that. And you might end up just losing. I mean, it just makes more sense to keep all that income for yourself, right? Anne says to Caesar, well, that's annoying. I'll adjust my expectations on that. Okay, just had a delivery thrown at my door. Anne says to Caesar, thank you. Sally says, I recorded a piece from the yellow wallpaper, edited, added effects until the Audacity ACX check took it, but I still hated how out of breath it sounded. I deleted it instead of submitting. Were you overthinking it? Were you overthinking it? Keep in mind that we're not Morgan Freeman. You know, coming out the gate, it takes time and practice, and you will learn breath control. You will learn to do all of these things the more that you do it, right? If you sounded out of breath, you might need more practice in finding places to pause where you can take that breath that you can cut out in post, or to expand your diaphragm and your lung capacity, that you can also learn how to, say an entire sentence without taking a breath, or read an entire sentence without taking a breath. All of that stuff comes with practice and time. But I would say don't allow yourself to overthink too much. Just get your demos out there. Get the auditions done. Don't overthink it. Just send it and forget it. Joy says, hi, Caesar. Yes, I'm still on Audacity, and it was fine that the weird part are the high pass and expander plugins. Dwight says, FYI, for you newcomers to Angela's Platinum Group, you need to get into our Discord. For those of you confused about it, I am in production of a Discord video for you to learn from. It should be done by end of the week. The moderators will have to link for it for the first area you enter. And if you could, Dwight, I could also put that video on the welcome page on my website for brand new Platinum members. As soon as you join Platinum, I have a welcome page that has pretty much where to find everything. I can include your video on there too in the Discord section. I can do that too, if you don't mind. Caesar says to Katie, if the noise lives below your fundamental, like a low rumble from the road or an HVAC, you can remove a lot of that using a high-pass filter on your EQ. Try it out when you can. Caesar says to Joy, in your case, ideally, yes, they should be plugins. Audacity doesn't have a very good EQ or dynamics control. If you're willing to switch to a DAW that allows for effects racks, Adobe Audition, you should. Just saying. Caesar says to Joy, alternative, you may want to explore Dwight's recommendation of a third-party one-time purchase option for Adobe Audition, which you can find in our Discord. Joy says to Caesar, Audacity just had an update, so I'm going to check and see if it has those plugins. Kristen says, I'm very new to VO and just wondered what you mean when you refer to an effects rack. An effects rack is it's the bundle of effects that you are using on every file that enhance the sound of your voice and reduce the bad stuff. So each effect in your DAW does something specific, whether it's a noise reducer, and hang on a second. Another effect could be reducing plosives, the p sound that you get when you're talking into your microphone. Another effect could be a equalizer. Another effect could be a mouth noise reducer, right? There's a specific effect that does something specific, and then you have several of them together that all address an issue or enhance something in your audio quality. And all of those together is considered your rack or your effects rack, that bundle of effects that you use in conjunction with each other to make you sound your best, essentially. That is an effects rack. Michael McGovern says, I kept downloading macros and found one that almost worked, then adjusted it. Yeah, most default settings are a good place to start with effects or macros. and just need a little, sometimes just a subtle adjustment to your specific space and setup, for sure. Caesar says to Joy, Audacity's newest update includes a master channel and the Muse Hub plugin marketplace, but still doesn't support recallable effects racks. It has macros, but those are inefficient. Caesar would know. Joy says to Caesar, Adobe purchase, yes. Interesting. I'll check it out. Diane Frauenholz. Did I say that right? Diane here. Hello. Brand new to this group and learning. I was wondering how you read a book into your microphones. Do you have the book on Kindle or on another tablet or laptop? I usually have the script. The author, let me just back up and say the author should send you the manuscript in either Word or PDF formats. That is traditionally how it is done. So they will send you the manuscript digitally, and then you can read it from a tablet. You can read it from a different screen. You can read it on the same screen that you have your DAW on, or you can use a Kindle if you wanted to, but then, I think you have to purchase the book that way. But however works for you is fine, as long as it works. As long as you can read it digitally, that works. Caesar says to Diane, usually the author provides you with a Word document or PDF, which you can mark up or annotate. The manuscript can be read on a primary or secondary screen, matter of preference. I should probably wrap this up here. I got a meeting here shortly. Lacey says, thank you, Angela, for all your advice and videos. Of course. Glad to help. Dwight says to Donnie, not only will you hear Angela's voice in your head, but once you have earned her mom look, you will fear. I mean, see that too. I'm not scary. Diane says to Caesar, thank you so much. What sort of things do you annotate on your script? Highlight colors for characters, perhaps? Yes. And if you are reading through it beforehand, which I highly recommend doing, if you're reading it out loud, you can start to kind of feel where maybe, let me just insert this here. The spoken word and the written word are two different things, right? So the written word, a comma may be placed somewhere where it could be better suited elsewhere or just completely eliminated, right? So don't pause where there's a comma in the manuscript or something like that. So if you're making a mental note to yourself, it doesn't have to be a mental note. You can actually annotate the script to say, okay, well, maybe pause here instead of here, right? Or if you have to look up a pronunciation, you can, write in the phonetic spelling of it or something. That's what he means by annotate. And then highlighting characters is definitely a good thing. The dialogue, like assigning a different color for each character's dialogue, is definitely going to help you too. Crystal says, I'm seriously loving the Discord group. I am just getting started in VO after dreaming of it since I was a child. The group is very welcoming and makes me excited to participate. Oh, I love it. Caesar says to Diane, oh, yes, absolutely. In a duet, for example, you can highlight male lines and female lines in different colors. Different characters and accents can also benefit from annotation. Dwight says, Angela, you make me blush. They have access to me. My wife might have something about that. I'm so conflicted. Smash the buttons. You then get to buy new gear. We love New Gear Day. Donnie says, and be patient. They aren't known for always being quick. Yeah, the rights holders? Yeah, not always. Dwight says, at yours, truly, once you get some books or commercials under your belt and money in your pocket, it is then that you should consider positron as an editor, but not until you are producing a lot. There's a lot of effective tools that can help you streamline your processes, for sure. But of course, it's a business expense. They cost money, right? So I would say in the beginning, take the time to learn your DAW, learn what everything does, learn how to edit effectively, learn to do all of that stuff. And then as you start to get some credits under your belt and things, then once you have capital for your business, then start investing in some of these tools to make your life easier. Joy says, oh yeah, my laptop would be guilty. What I do is sit back as far as I can and put close out programs I'm not using. I also put a couple of t-shirts on the side of where the fan is. I'm trying to picture, you want to move the microphone away from your laptop as far as possible. I do speak words good most of the time. The microphone has to be, not you, your microphone has to be far away from whatever's causing noise. Dwight said, Angela, I'd be honored for it to be included on your intro page. I mean, it would be helpful. I mean, any kind of help to make new Platinum members feel a little less confused about all the things going on, I think is definitely helpful. Diane says, you pronounced my name beautifully. Thank you for the page and thoughtful answer. Welcome. Glad to have you. Dwight said, I love streamlining processes in your life. Talk to me. That's my jam. Caesar, of course, has a comment for Joy also. Be careful not to choke out the airflow of your laptop. The hotter it gets, the louder. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, don't try to put anything on top of your computer to quiet it down, because you don't want to impede the airflow of your. Don't do that. Just try to get it as far away from you as possible. That is ideally what you want to do. You don't want to cause any more issues than you already have, right? The hotter it gets, the louder the fans become. You can position your laptop behind your mic. Please send me a raw file for assessment. Dwight says, Angela, repeat after me. I are a voiceover expert. Yes. I think my brain is moving too fast for my mouth, and my mouth is trying to catch up. It happens sometimes when I'm pressed for time. I just sound like a bumbling idiot. Anywho, well, I thank you guys for being here with me today. I always appreciate you guys spending a little bit of your day with me and everyone else here in the comment section. Again, if you're looking for a great group to join, I mean, my Platinum group, we are an awesome bunch of people, I have to say. But great place to start. If you have anything that you guys want to talk about as a group, anything specific, a topic, a question, then please comment those below, and it could very well be a topic for a future live chat. But I will be here next week, same bat time, same bat channel, and until then, happy VOing. I think that's going to be my new sign off. Thank you, Dwight, for that. And let's see if I can end the stream elegantly. Probably not, gracefully. Let's see. Thank you for listening to She Lancer Mom Entrepreneur with VoiceOver Angela. That's me. For more information about me, visit my website, voiceoverangela.com, or hop on over to my YouTube channel, VoiceOver Angela. Again, thanks for listening. Have a great day.